Hell to pay, Trump warns Hamas as US holds hostage talks with group. The United States broke a long-standing diplomatic taboo by holding secret talks with Hamas on securing the release of US hostages held in Gaza, sources told Reuters Wednesday. US hostage affairs envoy Adam Boehler has the authority to talk directly with the Hamas, the White House said when asked about discussions which broke with the decades old policy against negotiating with groups that the US brands as terrorist organizations. Boehler and Hamas officials met in Doha in recent weeks. Two sources briefed on the negotiations said it was not clear who represented Hamas. At the White House, Trump met a group of hostages who had been released recently under the Gaza ceasefire deal, and he issued a stark new threat against Hamas in a social media post. He demanded that Hamas release all the hostages now, not later, including the remains of dead hostages. Or it is over for you. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do I say. Trump delays tariffs on most goods from Mexico for a month. Move after talks with Mexican President. Commerce Secretary says levies on imports from Canada likely to be postponed. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that he would offer a 1 month exemption from tariffs from imports from Mexico that trade under rules of US Mexico Canada Agreement, the trade pact he signed in his first term. The president wrote on Truth Social that he would give Mexican products an exemption until April 2 from the 25% tariffs that he levied on all products from Mexico and most goods from Canada earlier this week. EU plans defense boost, backs Ukraine at emergency meet after US aid wanes. The European leaders Thursday said they would stand by Ukraine and spend more on defense in the world upended by Donald Trump's reversal of US policies. Nepal PM Oli challenges former king to contest in polls. Manmohan Singh's family gives nod for his memorial site at Rashtriya Smriti Sthal. The family of the late Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh has given the government its written approval for his memorial on a 900 square kilometer plot in the middle of the complex of Samadhis called the Rashtriya Smriti Sthal near Delhi's Rajghat. Kashmir solved when part stolen by Pakistan returns, says Jaishankar. On China says wants relationship that respects interest, work for both. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said Kashmir issue will be solved once the stolen part of Kashmir, which is under illegal Pakistani occupation, returns to India. Speaking late Wednesday at Chatham House, the London-based think tank, Jaishankar, responding to a question on solving issues in Kashmir, said. Jaishankar remarks draw sharp response from Islamabad Thursday. Pakistan Foreign Office spokesperson Shafaqat Ali Khan said, "We reject the remarks made by the Indian External Affairs Minister on Jammu and Kashmir during an event held by Chatham House." Invest in Madhya Pradesh, the future of growth and innovation. Prime Minister Modi, it is right time to invest in Madhya Pradesh. The state's momentum will define the next decade of India's growth. MP secures 30 lakh crore in investments, unlocking 21 lakh crore job opportunities. Multi-sectoral growth unleashed. NTPC inked an MOU to develop 20 gigawatt of solar and wind projects. Adani Group committed 1.1 lakh crore to projects in mining, cement, smart meter technology and infrastructure. Prime Minister, while addressing the GIS in Bhopal, said the Madhya Pradesh is evolving beyond its traditional industrial identity. Former aides of BSP chief Mayawati pained at party decline but not surprised. Let's expand the scope of democracy to incorporate federal interest over and above mere numbers. Bharatiya Jatiya Nagrik Party enters at a time when dust hasn't settled and people seek stable governance. Protect language, don't politicize it. COP30 host Brazil calls for additional structures to ensure climate commitments are delivered. Brazil, the host of this year's annual climate conference COP30, has called for setting up additional multilateral mechanisms complementary to Paris Agreement framework to ensure commitments by countries on climate actions are fulfilled. In an interaction with journalists here Thursday, Brazil's Minister for Environment and Climate, Marina Silva, acknowledged that the US pullout from the Paris Agreement would hurt the progress on climate action, but said multilateral process was still the only way to effectively deal with climate crisis. Minister Silva, who was now in New Delhi to attend the annual World Sustainable Development Summit, said the idea is to propose the discussion on building structures that could be complementary to the process to follow up on the commitments that have been made. As US sanctions hit India's Russian oil imports, smaller suppliers crash in. Indian refiners diversifying sources by turning to Africa and Latin America. Recent American sanctions on Russia's oil trade have started impacting India's crude oil imports from Moscow, which fell to a 2 year low in February. To make up for the lost Russian volumes for now, Indian refiners are actively diversifying their crude oil sources by turning to relatively smaller suppliers from regions like Africa and Latin America. In January, just before demitting office, the US's Joe Biden administration announced sweeping sanctions against Russia's oil trade. It sanctioned as many as 183 tankers. In February, India's oil imports from Russia declined from 14% month on month to 1.43 million barrels per day, a lowest since January 23. Shows data from commodity market analytics firm Kepler. Russia's share in India's oil imports declined to around 30% in February, down significantly from the 2024 of around 34%. But India's traditional Western Asian oil suppliers failed to cash in on this opportunity, while few smaller players collectively saw their oil supplies to India rise notably to make up for the shortfall in Russian oil volumes. With the exception of Iraq, which is India's second largest supplier of crude oil imports from other key Western Asian suppliers such as Saudi Arabia, UAE declined sequentially. Oil imports from Iraq in February rose to 5.5% sequentially to 1.09 million barrel per day, while imports from Saudi Arabia declined over 6% to 6.6 million barrel per day. India's oil imports from UAE fell over 22% to 300,000 billion barrels per day. On the other hand, oil imports from relatively smaller sources of India's oil imports like Brazil, Nigeria, Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico, Qatar, Oman, etc. rose in February. India's GPUs in 3 to 4 years will to be among top 5 tech nations. The country will develop its own graphic processing units within the next 3 to 4 years, marking a major milestone in technological advancement, Electronics and IT Minister said. We are working on developing our own chipsets. Extensive consultations with experts are underway. The government is currently working on the contours of the second phase of the India Semiconductor Mission, which is with the design and outlay of the scheme finalized. The next phase of India Semiconductor Mission is currently in the works. We had preliminary discussions with many stakeholders. Krishnan said that under the second phase, the government will also look to provide some support through raw materials, equipment, gases, and specialty chemicals. The center has created a fresh $15 blueprint for the second phase of India's semiconductor mission. Under the renewed scheme, the government was planning to offer capital support for raw materials and gases in chip making manufacturing. The country has so far attracted investment worth $18 billion till date under the first phase of India's semiconductor mission. The Tata PSMC fab, being and built at a cost of roughly 11 billion, is one of the five India semiconductor projects the government has greenlit under the semiconductor mission. Apart from the Fab 4 assembly testing plants by the US-based Micron Technology, Tata's Murugappa Group's CG Power in the partnership with Japan's Renesas and Canadian Semicon are also under construction. Swing refers to lateral movement of a cricket ball in the air before it touches the ground. So that's all in this one. See you in the next.